All right, let's jump right in. Today, we are talking about a brand new ESG framework that might just change the game for how companies handle sustainability. And this is especially true in really complex regions like Southeast Asia. Now, this isn't just another boring set of rules. Think of it more like a practical blueprint for making a real-world impact.
So let me just ask you this straight up. When you're talking about global rules, does one size really fit all? It seems like a simple enough question, right? But believe me, the answer is anything but.
Because what happens is, when you try to jam these global ESG standards into all these unique local situations, it doesn't work. It feels like you're trying to force the wrong piece into a puzzle. And this mismatch, it's a huge headache for companies. So let's unpack exactly why this is such a big challenge.
Okay, so at the very core of this whole thing is what we're calling the global ESG puzzle. You've got companies being told to follow a single playbook, but they're operating in places with completely different rules, different customs, and, totally unique economic situations.
And this slide, this just nails the central problem. Look, on one side, you've got these big global standards. Think TCFD and GRI that are all about uniformity. They want universal metrics so we can compare apples to apples across the board. But then, on the other side, you have the messy, complex reality on the ground, especially in places like ASEAN, with this whole mix of unique laws, local customs, and economic conditions. It's a fundamental clash.
There's actually a name for this whole situation. It's called legal pluralism. And it's just a fancy way of saying that in any one place, you don't just have one set of laws. You've got this entire ecosystem of official state laws, plus informal community rules, plus these deep-rooted customs, all running at the same time. And somehow, companies have to figure out how to navigate all of it.
So you might be asking, how in the world do you solve a puzzle this complicated? Well, that's exactly where this new proposed solution comes into play. It's called the Integrated ESG Pathways model, or IEP for short.
So, the IEP model is basically tailor-made for these tricky, real-world situations. It's a framework designed to make ESG practices genuinely effective. We're talking about moving way beyond just ticking boxes for compliance and actually creating some meaningful, positive change.
It's all built on three key ideas. Think of it like a really smart GPS. First, there's adaptability. It's flexible, it can change the route based on local conditions. Second, multi-scalar integration. It connects your final destination, those big global goals, with the turn-by-turn directions of what you need to do locally. And third, iterative processes. It's always learning, always analyzing the journey to find a better, more efficient way to get there.
But let's pause for a second. Why is this so urgent? Why do we even need a new model right this minute? Well, the simple answer is that the pressure is on. There are some serious forces, both internal and external, that are pushing companies to adapt and fast.
And one of the biggest drivers right now is coming from the European Union. It's their new Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, the CSRD. Now you might think, okay, that's an EU thing, but its impact is absolutely global. Any company that does significant business in the EU, and that includes a lot of companies in Asia, now has to follow these super strict reporting rules or they're going to face some major penalties. The game has well and truly changed.
And look, this isn't just about dodging fines. This quote really gets to the heart of it. When you get this alignment right, it does so much more. The data you're reporting becomes more credible, you build real trust with your investors and the local community, and you create a system that can actually adapt to whatever challenges come next. So the bottom line is, it just makes for better business.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. But what about the how? How does this IEP model actually work on the ground? Well, it's all driven by three core dynamics.
Let's walk through them. First up, harmonization. This is all about making those global standards actually fit with local laws and culture, so you can avoid all those compliance headaches. Second, you've got amplification. This is where you use the big players, the industry leaders, to champion best practices and spread them across the entire market. And third, sustainability cycles. This is about building in constant feedback loops so your strategy is always learning and getting smarter. So just think of it like this. Make it fit, spread the success, and keep on improving.
All right, now for the really interesting part. Let's see how this model actually works in the real world. We're going to shift gears from theory to practice and look at how companies right in Southeast Asia are already putting these ideas to work. This table gives us a fantastic snapshot. You can see PTT in Thailand using that harmonization dynamic to line up climate standards with their local energy policy. Then you've got a company like Unilever, which uses its massive supply chain to amplify its sustainability practices. And then there's Sime Darby, using sustainability cycles to constantly improve its own blueprint. It really proves that this model is flexible enough to work in totally different industries, from energy to shipping.
But when researchers looked at all these companies, they found something really critical. While a lot of them are getting way better at aligning with global rules, that's the harmonization part, most are still missing strong systems for that third dynamic, the constant feedback and the deep engagement with stakeholders. And that is the biggest opportunity for growth right now.
So, after digging into the problem, the proposed solution, and how it's being used in the real world, what's the big takeaway here? What does all this mean for the future of ESG?
The most important point is this. That whole debate about global standards versus local needs, it's over. Good ESG isn't about picking a side anymore. It's about building a smart, flexible bridge that actually connects the two. The future is all about integration, not some rigid one-size-fits-all mandate.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to chew on. Is this type of adaptive, context-sensitive way of doing things the very thing the IEP model is all about? Is that truly the future of what it means to be a sustainable business?